Welcome to episode 5 of Mr. Irrelevant, a draft podcast. Max Chadwick alongside PJ Clark and Tate Sigworth, wrapping up the offensive side of the ball in this 2020 NFL draft. And guys, we hit the pass catchers last week. This week, though, we're hitting the big guys up front and the guys behind them, the running backs and the offensive line. And first, guys, I want to ask you, this interior offensive line is kind of a weak class. However, Tate, there is a guy who is from the rival school to your Ohio State Buckeyes, and he's getting some first-round love. That's Michigan center Cesar Ruiz. And Tate, what do you think about him? Should he be getting first-round hype?
Yeah, I mean, he's a heck of an athlete. I don't know about first-round hype, especially because of the college he's from. I don't think anybody from that school should ever get first-round hype. That's just a fact of life.
Not even Patterson?
Shea Patterson? Don't even get me started, Max. We didn't talk about him in the quarterback episode, but there's Jake Fraud and then there's Shea Patterson. Horrible. Cesar Ruiz, I mean, he's good. I think his big problem is versus power rushers. If a team can get him in the second round and they have a need for center, I think that's a great pick for them, but I don't know about the first round.
I don't know if he deserves a first round either, like Tate said, but I do think he's going to go in the first round just because this is a really bad interior offensive line class, especially compared to kind of recent years. Obviously, Quentin Nelson 2 years ago, the best guard prospect we've ever seen. But the interior offensive line this year, not very good. So one of these guys is bound to go in the first round, late in the 20s, you'd think, to a playoff team that needs line help. And I think Cesar Ruiz is probably the guy.
I like Ruiz. Again, I like you guys said, I don't think he's worth a first-round pick. I could see someone like the Chiefs who maybe have a hole at the center position thinking, oh, he's the guy to patch up our offensive line a little bit. What impressed me about him, though, is he's under 21 years old, and he's got very few weaknesses. So, I mean, look, I like him. Again, though, he's not a great athlete. He didn't put up a great combine. I don't think he's worth a first-round pick. But like Tate said, a second-round pick is probably where I would take him. Is there any guy, though, PJ, is there any guy that we haven't talked about that we should be watching out for at the interior offensive line?
Yeah, I have another center, a guy who I think is right up there with Ruiz. He's my number two center, Tyler Biadasz, from Wisconsin. I am really impressed with this guy, another Big Ten offensive lineman. Wisconsin constantly producing really good running backs, and that's because of their offensive line program. Biadasz holding down the center position, was a 3-year starter for them. I think he's going to be really good in the NFL.
My guy to look out for is John Simpson. There's 3 interior offensive linemen, and 2 of them are guards. We haven't talked about guards at all here in this conversation. John Simpson's a guard. Went to Clemson, protected Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I think of all the programs in the nation, I think Clemson will prepare you very well for the NFL. I don't think he'll be in the first round, but for a second-round pick, a team that needs a guard, he's big, strong. He was third in the offensive line in bench reps. I think he could be a very good second-round or third-round pick.
So one guy that I love on the interior offensive line is Tani Moody from Fresno State, the offensive guard. He is a nasty football player. I mean, after the play, even right when the play is about to end, he still throws one more shoulder into the defender he's blocking. That's a guy that I want on my interior offensive line. He is a nasty football player. However, though, the big question with him, he's kind of like Tua Tagovailoa in that the guy has never stayed healthy. As a true freshman, he was one of the best guards in the country. The year after that, though, he tore his Achilles, only played 80 snaps in his sophomore year. And then this past year, the junior year, only played 230 snaps, and then he had a shoulder injury that ended his season. I think if he's healthy, he will be one of the best guards in the league, but it's if he stays healthy. That's the major question mark. But one position group that doesn't have question marks is this offensive tackle class. And PJ, this might be the best tackle class we've seen in years.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get 6 guys in the first round, I think. And I don't know if 6 guys should go in the first round. It's something we've said a lot, especially with the wide receivers. There's so much talent, and teams in the 20s could make a move to get to these guys. But I think a lot of these guys, especially when we may have the top 4 tackles go in the top 10, that next tier is going to get pushed up into the bottom half of round 1. I would not be stunned to see all 6 go.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be more than 6. I mean, we're going to talk about a bunch of guys here, 5 or 6 that are going to go in the top half of the first round. And like PJ said, that bottom half, that second level, I guess, where there's a pretty big jump in terms of talent is going to get pushed up into the later parts of the first round, and there's going to be a whole bunch.
Yeah, look, this is an insane offensive line class. I mean, there are so many guys that you could say are worth taking in the top half of the first round, like you guys said. One guy, though, especially, is Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, and he blew up the combine. I mean, he had a 4.85 40-yard dash. I mean, he is a special athlete. Tate, what do you like out of him? He also put up 99th percentile on both the broad and vertical jump. I mean, he is an athlete, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Max, he dominated the combine. He's number one offensive lineman in the 40-yard, the vertical jump, and the broad jump. And keep in mind, he's 6'5", 320, moving at a 4.85 40. I mean, holy cow. I mean, like I said, I mean, he's built great. He's got great hands. One of the things I keep seeing pop up about him, he's got this wrestler background. Apparently, the tight ends, if you play basketball, you're really good. The offensive lineman, if you wrestle, apparently you're going to be really good. I don't know. He's got great hands. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, and I think he's going to do great things to the NFL.
In case you haven't noticed, the theme of tonight is going to be Big Ten offensive linemen. Because this guy from Iowa, he is a stud. He's my number one tackle just because he is an athlete. And I think that is, as the game gets more high paced and high octane, you're running these West Coast offenses. I think your offensive linemen got to have good conditioning, be able to run the field. And I think Tristan Wirfs does that better than anybody in this class. But something for me is I don't know if he's as pro ready as two other guys that we're about to get to on the left side, at least. I think maybe he starts at right tackle this year, no matter who takes him. But he would be my first tackle off the board if I was the one making the picks.
Look, he also has a lot of accolades that are worth mentioning. Iowa is known as a really good offensive line school, and he's the first ever true freshman to start at Iowa in the Kirk Ferentz era. I mean, that's pretty good. He also broke Brandon Scherf's hang clean record when he was only 20 years old. He's an athlete, like PJ said. I mean, he's got a couple question marks. He's maybe not as refined as some other guys. I mean, he's also not the longest guy in the world. A lot of people thought maybe his athleticism and his lack of length would make him kick inside to guard, but I think he showed at the combine he has more than enough athleticism to play at tackle. But PJ, like you said, one guy who is even bigger than Tristan Wirfs is Mekhi Becton. He is a man, 6'7", 370 pounds. But PJ, do you have any question marks about him? He also can move a little bit too. Do you have any question marks about him for the next level?
I do. This is the guy I'm lowest of the big four tackles. You're going to have the two next guys we're going to talk about in addition to Tristan Wirfs. Becton would be the guy I would not draft of the four, just because you mentioned he's huge. He is athletic. Another guy that was a combine freak. I just have a lot of questions about the pass blocking. I think the run blocking, he's an absolute mauler, and you're going to get that no matter what. I am really afraid his pass blocking is not up to snuff just yet. And for a team like Cleveland or the Jets who need to protect a quarterback immediately and try to get the most out of them on a rookie contract, I don't know if a project like Becton is the guy you want to go with.
Yeah, PJ is exactly right. As a Cleveland Browns fan, I think we might be going tackle where we are in the first round. We did side Jack Conklin, so I don't know for sure. But I agree. I mean, Becton, he's a freak, 6'7", 364 pounds, and he's running a 5'1". I mean, whoa. That's not the man I want to see, pulling from his or he needs a tackle. He doesn't pull, but never mind. I just not the guy I want to see on the football field, okay? But like PJ said, again, just echoing PJ right now, he's got pass protection problems and is definitely more of a project than the other guys we're going to talk about, including Wirfs. So I just probably fourth, maybe fifth in the top tier of the offensive tackles here in this draft.
Yeah, look, there is a clear big five of this offensive tackle group. I think Mekhi Becton is a clear number 5, even though a lot of people are saying he might even go top 5 in the draft, maybe to the Giants. We know Dave Gettleman loves his big boys who can move, and Mekhi Becton fits that perfectly. But like PJ said, I have some major question marks about his pass protection at the next level. It's all about passing now in the NFL. And yeah, Mekhi Becton has the highlight reel blocks that make you go, holy expletive. But the pass protection, only 73 true pass sets, which means no screens. He was protected a lot in the Louisville offense, too. They ran a lot. They had a lot of play action. But when he had the 73 true pass sets, which is 40 less than anyone else of the top guys, he had allowed 8 pressures, too. So I think Mekhi Becton definitely has some question marks. One guy, though, that I don't have a lot of question marks I'll let PJ talk about because the Jets might take him is Jedrick Wills, the right tackle for Alabama. And we talked about Tristan Wirfs and Mekhi Becton, certified freaks, PJ, but Jedrick Wills is also a freak of nature.
Jedrick Wills, this is the guy. I said I would take Wirfs first just because I think he's probably the best long term. But if you want a day one starter at left tackle, Jedrick Wills is going to be your guy. And I would. You mentioned the Jets picking at 11. He's not making it there. It's not that I want to tackle. I would be stunned if Wills falls out of the top 10. Cleveland, this would be a great fit for you. But Jedrick Wills, he is the pass protector. You want to set your quarterback up for success immediately. Day one starter at left tackle. Jedrick Wills is better than anybody else we're going to mention tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have Wirfs 1 and Wills 2, but the difference between them is so marginal. This is a guy that protected Tua Tagovailoa's blind side. He's a strong run blocker who can get to the second level very well. His running backs averaged 3.5 yards before contact when they were running behind him. 3.5 yards before contact. He's an incredible run blocker. He only had a 3% pressure rate on all of his passes in his career, which is pretty good. Room for improvement, but I mean, Wills 2-1. It's kind of interchangeable for me with Wirfs and Wills.
Yeah, look, the top four in this draft, it's almost interchangeable. I can see anyone saying that. PJ, I want to ask you though. You said Jedrick Wills can play left tackle. You're comfortable with him sliding him from right to left tackle early in his career?
Yeah, I have the least questions about him. I know Andrew Thomas, who we're about to get to, is the prototypical left tackle, but I think he played on the right side at Alabama for a reason because Tua throws with the devil's hand, as Tate would like to say.
It's the wrong hand. It is.
Well, look, Tua's little brother Talia is a right-handed quarterback, so I'm sure in a couple years will be pretty high. Or Tate at least will be pretty high on him. But yeah, getting back to Jedrick Wills, I love him. I mean, he is explosive. He's agile. I mean, he made some blocks. Getting to linebackers at the second level is so impressive to me. His vertical was really impressive, 34.5 inches. That's the 97th percentile for offensive tackles. He is an explosive tackle in a class filled with freak athletes. But PJ, you mentioned before, this is the guy that actually I have as my number one tackle, but it's so close. I mean, you could have Wirfs there. You could have Jedrick Wills there as well. I love Andrew Thomas coming out of Georgia. And the reason is I think he's got the least amount of question marks, the fewest question marks coming out. He's a guy that, played well throughout his career, didn't really do too many bad things. Yeah, his feet are a little bad, but I think his strength and the way he's played, he's dominated SEC play. I like Andrew Thomas probably the most out of these tackles.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about three guys who had really outstanding combines and made an impact. And I think Andrew Thomas had a fine combine for who Andrew Thomas is, but because it was only fine and he didn't burn the world down like the other three, I think Andrew Thomas is really underrated at this point. And he's the guy that I think is most likely to fall, even to the Jets at 11. The other three I expect to go in the top 10, whether Becton deserves it or not. But Andrew Thomas is a guy I expect to be there on the board for the Jets at 11, and if they don't take him, fall even further into that teens area. And I don't think he deserves that at all.
I mean, this guy's coming from Georgia, protected Jake Fraud. He's got these long arms, 36 inches. He's very good in the run game. DeAndre Swift had a heck of a year. Jake Fraud, I mean, he's fine. Can do a job for him. Jake Fraud's nothing special. Needed a good tackle on his blind side. That's exactly what Andrew Thomas is. If he goes to the Browns at 10, I'll be happy with that and screw over PJ at 11.
Yeah, look, I mean, like I said, he dominated SEC play. If you could dominate in the SEC, I like you pretty good translating that to the NFL. One guy, though, also on the Georgia offensive line, left tackle Andrew Thomas, right tackle Isaiah Wilson, who now there has been rumors of him jumping into the first round. Tate, what do you think about him moving all the way up into the first round conversation?
Fine, I guess. I mean, it could be a situation of what we were talking about with Wills, Becton, Thomas, and Wirfs kind of bringing up the rest of the class because all of them are going to go so high. I think it is a little bizarre. Isaiah Wilson's a little young, a little more raw than these other guys. He's not a polished product, and he probably should have just stayed in college.
Yeah, that's my big thing too. It's obviously gonna work out for him because he's gonna go in the first round or early second. But this is a guy who played right tackle alongside Andrew Thomas, as Max said, and he would slot in to play left tackle at the University of Georgia next year as a redshirt sophomore, or as a redshirt junior, rather. And he just completely passed that opportunity up. I guess it's going to work for him, but he's the guy with the most question marks in tier 2 for me, just because we've never seen him play on the left side. And if that's really where you want to draft a guy in the first round to protect your quarterback's blind side.
And look, he's not as big as Mekhi Becton in terms of weight, but he is big. 6'7", 340 pounds. I also have major question marks about this kid at the next level. I mean, I think the first round takes for him, I think, would be ridiculous. I wouldn't touch this guy until probably day 2 or even early day 3. I mean, I don't love this kid that much. He's not a guy that can maybe go out in space too much. I don't love Isaiah Wilson. I love Andrew Thomas. I agree with you guys. I would have loved to see Isaiah Wilson come back for another year and play at the left side of that Georgia offense, protecting for Jamie Newman, who I really like, and see if Isaiah Wilson can actually play left tackle. But he's coming out now. For that reason, I have so many questions on him. I wouldn't touch him even close to the first round. So those are the guys that we should really watch out for. Those are the guys that you need to know heading into this draft. PJ, I want to ask you, who are the guys that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, but you think could carve out a nice career at offensive tackle in the NFL?
My guy, I think he's getting pumped up a little bit. Again, another freak athlete who killed the combine. My guy's Ezra Cleveland from Boise State. A guy who has a lot of question marks as a blocker, which is what, you're supposed to do as an offensive tackle. But first team All Mountain West Conference twice. Boise State, not a Power 5 team, but they play a lot of good competition, always in the top 25. But this is a guy who had a really good 40, a 4.93. If you're sub 5 as an offensive tackle, you're going to be rising up draft boards. That's one of those numbers that inflates guys, whether they deserve it or not. I really do like him as a player. I think the second round, where I project him to go, is a little rich for me as what he is right now. But I do think he's going to have a suitable NFL career.
My guy to watch out for is Austin Jackson from USC. Has graded pretty well. He's pretty raw, pretty young, but I think he has great potential. He's kind of more of the Becton type, but he's not getting that top 10 hype like Becton is, and I think he's going to fall to a very good situation for him later in the first round, and he's going to be able to groom and kind of ride the bench almost and get limited reps, and by year 2 and 3 become the starter that he could very easily become.
Yeah, look, I like Ezra Cleveland. I do have some question marks about Austin Jackson. I don't love the first round for him either. However, though, one guy that is playing Division III football that I like because he went to the Senior Bowl and he dominated at the Senior Bowl is Ben Bartch from St. John's. I love this kid. Like I said, you can't really watch a Division III tape and glean too much off of that and say, oh, that's what he's dominating Division III guys, is basically what I'm saying. However, though, when you put him against NFL caliber players at the Senior Bowl and he dominates the way he did, this is a guy I think you should be able to take in the second round and feel pretty comfortable. So, yeah, there probably is going to be a learning curve going from Division III to the NFL, but it's still, I think, a guy that can really make his mark in the NFL. So that's the offensive line. Interior offensive line, not great. The offensive tackles are very good. You want to say something?
Yeah, before we move on, I do just want to throw out a Josh Jones mention here. I know Max really likes him. That's another guy that much like Ezra Cleveland, Austin Jackson, those guys in this second tier kind of there. Josh Jones is a guy that might go in the first round. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just mention his name at least here.
He's in the rundown. I completely forgot.
He's really raw to me. I would stay away.
Really?
From him. Really, really raw. I had a knee injury this year. Not a huge fan.
What do you think about him?
I don't know about very raw. I think there's guys like Becton and Austin Jackson who are a little more raw in terms of our tackle prospects. But, I mean, he came in. He had an amazing Senior Bowl, if we're talking about Senior Bowl guys. His combine results were a little, I don't know, mediocre. But, I mean, I think in terms of that second tier, I think he'd be on the higher end, not on the bottom end, like PJ just said.
PJ, I'm so happy you caught me there because I actually love Josh Jones. He was in the rundown. I don't even know why I skipped past him.
What an idiot.
I love Josh Jones. This is a guy, I think he's better than Mekhi Becton. I would take him over them right now. I mean, he was dominant. He is raw, but I think the problem with saying he's raw is he still was really good at football. So, yeah, technique-wise, he can improve. But if he's that good already, and he's raw, that's pretty impressive.
I think he's coachable. I think that's what it is I think just based on, instinct and going out there and mauling guys, he's been pretty good so far. You get him with the right coaching staff, I think he's going to be really good. He's just a little bit of a project to take it, 18 for my blood.
I like him. I would take him probably top 20. But like I said, he dominated, and even though he's technique-wise he's not great, he's still dominated, which is really a really good platform to start on. Let's go to the position, guys, that is not getting a lot of love lately. That is the running back position. PJ, I wanted to ask you, what do you think the value of the modern-day running back is? How much is it diminishing, and where would you even take a running back, not only in this draft, but in all NFL drafts in general now?
I heard UDFA money is really, really good this year. I heard they're going to give out really, really, really high bonuses for undrafted free agents. That's where I would look to pick up a running back this year if I was trying to draft one. Because, I mean, what are you even doing? We've seen it time and time again. These running backs get picked, and I guess Zeke is kind of an exception because he's had at least sustained success. But Leonard Fournette, a guy we talked about in our prospect video, our top prospects of the decade, the guy had like 1 year last year. He couldn't find the end zone, just literally did not know how to score touchdowns. And even Zeke, who's been the best of this highly picked running back bunch in the last 5 years or so, you think the Cowboys would like Jalen Ramsey right now?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
In terms of positional value, it's not worth it. Saquon Barkley is going to be making $20 million as a running back in 2 years, and Dave Gettleman just has to live with that. And there is absolutely no reason to draft a running back in the first round, in the second round. Third round is where you can start to take the generational talent types, in my opinion. But, I would offer my condolences for Todd Gurley. The Rams were trying to trade him. They couldn't get anything for Todd Gurley, a top 10 pick, 6 years ago? What are we even doing here?
I mean, it's crazy how the value's gone down. None of these guys, I mean, there's some very good running backs coming out, but they're not going to get picked. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins are two very good running backs, but they're just not going to get picked because the value of the running back has tanked.
Oh, no. They're going to get picked. I'm going to laugh at them.
Did I say they weren't going to get picked? They are. They're going to get picked. I don't know if I would laugh at them like PJ because they're going to come in and do a job. But, I mean, if you look at value, when you have people like, Raheem Mostert in the Super Bowl making great plays and turning up, he was not a first-round pick. He's not a guy like Ezekiel Elliott. He's not a guy like Christian McCaffrey who was coming out of school with this amazing hype. There are guys out here like Marlon Mack, who I think was a fourth-round pick and is doing bits for the Colts. You know what I mean? He's a reliable running back.
Well,
you can get him by a dime a dozen.
McCaffrey's a little different because McCaffrey is this huge receiver that is, his routes out of the backfield are unlike anything that I have ever seen before. 8th overall, big stretch, but could you negotiate Christian McCaffrey as a receiver type thing into the first round for me? Yeah, and I think he's proven that. He's been the best offensive player in football since practically the minute he stepped on a field. But in terms of just drafting a bell cow running back, you're an idiot. You are just an idiot.
So, yeah, exactly. We're a draft podcast. So we're talking about, like, where would you take them in the draft? But still, we've been seeing these contracts for these running backs that they're getting. They are ridiculous. I bet the Cowboys right now, after letting Byron Jones walk, they probably want to look back at that Zeke contract and go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Running backs, to me, they're a product of your system and their environment. If you have a great offensive line, that running back's going to look great. If the offensive line sucks, the running back probably won't look that great either. You got to have a great scheme, great coaching. You can make almost any running back. There's so many good running backs is a big thing. So you can find, like PJ said, undrafted guys, get them in there. Sure, maybe they're not as good as Zeke, but really, what's the value of Zeke versus an undrafted guy when you could build up your offensive line, like the guys we just mentioned before, the interior offensive linemen and the tackles, build up the line, and your running back will look good enough. So that's why I think,
And we've talked about it. You've mentioned it twice already. This league is a passing league now. You want to build up the outside of your offensive line. And in a receiver draft like this, if you draft a running back in the low 20s or the 30s instead of one of these 12 wide receivers, why?
Yep, exactly. So let's talk about the running backs right now. one guy that's getting a lot of round one hype, especially the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, who think that they're a running back away from making another run at the Super Bowl. The guy is DeAndre Swift. We talked about some Georgia offensive linemen already. Tate, what are your thoughts about DeAndre Swift projecting to the next level? What do you think about the round one hype that he's getting right now?
Okay, so putting value aside, and we're just talking like
as prospects.
Prospects, you know what I mean? I'm for it. I think DeAndre Swift is very good. I think in terms of receiving, hold on, let me get my spreadsheet in order here because I'm a numbers guy. He's had 200 receiving yards this year on 24 catches, which is like decent. Playing at Georgia next to Jake Fraud, had 1,200 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't know. I probably have him third on my board behind Taylor and Dobbins personally, but you could maybe talk me into 2, maybe.
I mean, he's my running back 1 for whatever that's worth. My running back 1 should go in like the 4th round or at the earliest. But as a prospect, I think he's the only 3-down guy that comes in and immediately can play 3 downs this year for you. I think he's a very good receiver. Bailed out Jake Fraud plenty of times.
Well, that's true. That is true.
I really
needs a lot of bailing out from his teammates.
I like his talent. This is not a guy I would draft in the 1st round and be committed to for 5 years. But he's my RB1. He's the best of a bunch. Call him bad, call him good. I don't want any of them.
Yeah. Look, I like him too. I think RB1 is probably where I have him too because he's an excellent receiver. That's, I think, the most important thing. It's crazy now to talk about running backs and say, yeah, but what do they add to the pass game? We're not in that era anymore with Emmitt Smith where you're going to ground and pound with him. You got to add to the pass game, man. And we're going to talk about some guys that maybe don't add to the pass game, but DeAndre Swift does that. So if you're drafting him in the 3rd round or whatever, you're going to include him in the pass game, which is why I think he is RB1 because he probably is the best receiver of the bunch. And he's a pretty good player. He's a pretty good runner as well, but really he's nothing. When he gets the ball in his hands, there's nothing too special about him. So I don't love him as much as maybe guys before him, like Saquon Barkley or anything like that. But still, he's a good enough receiving back. One other Big Ten guy, though, is Jonathan Taylor. We talked about the Big Ten running backs that are coming up in the next 2. Jonathan Taylor, who had an awesome combine, also, PJ, an awesome career at Wisconsin, too.
Also an awesome offensive line to run behind. And also an awesome offensive scheme with Jackie Heisman, who can't throw the ball. So Jonathan Taylor got however many carries he wants. Jonathan Taylor, very good. Lot of miles on those legs.
Yeah.
That is my biggest negative against him. A lot of carries, lot of miles on those legs. Good at football, not a great receiver. We don't know if he's a great receiver because he hasn't shown it with Jackie Heisman out there in Wisconsin. But to me, he's probably RB3 for me, but not a 3-down guy. A lot of miles. Stay away.
Yeah, PJ's talking about a lot of miles. He had 320 attempts this year for over 2,000 yards. So congratulations.
Second straight year.
I know. He is running behind an amazing offensive line.
Is that a good thing, though?
Yes, because you're talking about the mileage. I know. But I think you're doubting his receiving abilities too much. He had 250 receiving yards, which, I mean, is good for a college running back. But I got questions, again, about his durability going to the next level because there's a lot of carries. I mean, he beat out A.J. Dillon, who we all know is the Boston College team himself. He only beat him by 2 carries. Yeah. So that's a whole lot of mileage on Jonathan Taylor's legs.
I mean, he's a guy that he is one of the best running backs in college football, one of the best running backs in college football history, honestly. He had 1,900 yards as a true freshman, almost 2,200 yards as a sophomore, 2,000 yards this past year. I mean, he's probably a guy I like second, maybe 3rd or 4th in this draft. I saw a DeMarco Murray comparison. I kind of like that. He's a sprinter. I mean, he is a bona fide sprinter. I actually didn't realize it with Jonathan Taylor until the combine. He ran a 4.39. I mean, he is a really, really fast running back, a prototype running back almost. But like PJ said, what does he add to the pass game? He hasn't proven it too much. Tate, like you said, he did add some in the past year, but before that, man, he didn't really do much. So there are questions about what he does in the passing game, but as a runner, I think there are no questions with Jonathan Taylor. Another guy Tate I know loves. I struggle to find question marks with this guy, J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State. Tate, take it away. What do you think about him?
Okay, 2,000 yards this year. This is J.K. all day we're talking about,
You're
and
soapbox tape.
he also let's not sleep on his 250 receiving yards. If we're going to talk about we need a receiving running back, J.K. can do that. Okay, he had a whole bunch of runs this year, nearly 300 something attempts. Okay, 301 attempts. Uh, the durability for me, not a question. J.K. all day, a beast, gets the job done for you in every way. Saved Ohio State's butts so many times this year when Justin Fields needed some saving. And this is RB1 for me.
Wow.
Sure, not biased at all. Let's just go with it. J.K. Dobbins to me is a guy who I originally, before the combine, and Jonathan Taylor had a really good one, and I thought he was going to be the first guy off the board. He was never number one on my board. He's number 4 for me as it's going to end as we come up to the draft here now. Good football player, had a really bad 2018, benefited from having Justin Fields in the backfield with him, I'd say. Good football player. Draft him 5th round, maybe, I guess.
I mean, I'd take probably 3rd round. He just said 3rd, and then after is probably where I take all these running backs. His running style and his vision, Tate, like you mentioned, he is an elite running back in that regard. He is fast. He has receiving ability. The only thing I'd say about him, he doesn't really break too many tackles. But other than that, I mean, he's a guy that you're going to plug in immediately, and there's not many question marks with J.K. Dobbins. I mean, throughout his career,
he's going to get the job done.
He gets the job done. I mean, as a Penn State fan, he made me so mad. I mean, I was cursing his name out all the time. He made some unreal plays. He's just a dependable running back. I don't like him as much as you as running back 1, but probably in my top 5, top 3, maybe even. One guy, though, who J.K. Dobbins had a great career, Jonathan Taylor, a great career. One guy who didn't have a great career, but then had an awesome year this past year, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. PJ, I mean, so many LSU guys had a breakout year. Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who's coming up in next year's draft. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, probably had one of the bigger breakout years we've seen at the running back position.
Here's RB2 for me. Take that for whatever you want. But if you want to talk about a guy who has proven time and time and again that there is value to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the passing game, that's him. He can catch the ball, had 55 catches this year. Yes, as we've mentioned with every other LSU player we've covered, Joe Burrow was throwing him the ball. I understand that. But this guy is shifty, can make moves in the open field. Once he's got open space, I have complete trust in him to get whatever amount of yards he needs. This is a guy who you can split out in the slot, get him going out of the backfield, runs great routes. I'm drafting him for his receiving ability alone, not to mention the 16 rushing touchdowns he had.
Yeah, I mean, PJ is exactly right. He had nearly 450 receiving yards. Had an incredible year on the ground. I'm going to give him the LSU discount and knock him down a little because who knows what that actually turns into. You know, he's 5'7", 200 pounds. Is he Darren Sproles? I don't know. It could be. But I don't know. I'm pumping the brakes a little on Clyde, especially because this was his first year, really. I mean, this is his first big year, and who knows what he's going to do in terms of longevity.
Yeah, exactly. My big question with him is he a one-hit wonder or not? He wasn't really featured too much at LSU before that, but he was really elusive.
It wasn't a one-hit wonder. A one-hit wonder in terms of really, really good. LSU 2018, not great, but he led the team in all-purpose yards.
No, he did. And look, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I like him for the next level. I think he's one of the top 5 running backs in this draft. It's just whether or not he can, like Tay said, can sustain it. He's also not really the fastest guy in the world. He ran a 4.6 at the combine, which is fine for the running position, but it's not really his game. His game is more breaking tackles, like Pete just said, in the pass game as well. I like this kid. I like this kid a lot. I think he isn't a one-hit wonder. I think he will be very good in the NFL. Let's move on to the ACC running back sub, because, of course, this is from CitrusTV Sports. We cover Syracuse, and they're in the ACC. 2 guys that absolutely torched Syracuse's awful run defense this year. Cam Akers from Florida State and A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. First, let's talk about Cam Akers, though. Tate, what do you think about the Florida State running back?
Good. Torch Syracuse, not saying much. You know what I mean? Syracuse is a bad football team for anybody who didn't watch any Syracuse football this year. But that being said, Cam Akers had a fine year, averaged 5 yards per carry, which is kind of on the lower end in terms of the running backs this year. Averaged 100 a game, had 14 rushing touchdowns. I don't know. I mean, he's good. He'll be fine. I feel like with a lot of these running backs, I'm kind of just meh on my opinion because I feel like they can do a job for you in the NFL, but then they'll burn out and not get a second contract.
That's called an NFL running back, Tate.
Well, I know a lot of these guys are NFL running backs. They'll come in, do fine, have a good couple years, but then maybe aren't going to get a second contract and just turn out to be whatever. I don't know.
That's literally the point of having a running back in 2020 is that you're just going to use him for 3 years and then he's not getting a second
gone.
I mean, that is how this works now. You can preach whatever you want about the Zeke Elliott's of the world. And Saquon Barkley, Max, I don't mean to take shot after shot of your boy here, but like he's going to run out of gas. Zeke's going to run out of gas. Leonard Fournette may already be out of gas. These guys do not have long NFL careers. That being said, Cam Akers, another guy who I'm concerned about being run into the ground. He's had a lot of carries over the last 3 years, but this is a guy seeing him in person in 2018 at Syracuse in a game that Florida State lost somehow. Remember when that happened? But Cam Akers to me is definitely an NFL running back. He's going to come in. He could be, an RB2 for a team with a team that already has a starter. I mean, hey, if the Jets want to spend a 5th-round pick on him, be Le'Veon's change of pace guy, I'm here for it. Cam Akers is a guy I want on my football team for 3 years until he has a knee injury, and then I don't want him anymore.
Cam Akers, I love. Coming out of high school, he was one of the top recruits in the country, number 3 overall. He didn't have the stats that other guys have. Look, other guys like Jonathan Taylor, they have the stats. Cam Akers only 1,100 yards this year. However, like I keep mentioning, the environment for a running back is critical. Cam Akers played behind one of the worst offensive lines in college football at Florida State. His vision was maybe questionable, but maybe it's because he didn't trust his offensive line and their holes. So I think this guy, he has all the tools necessary to succeed. He had a great 40. His shuttle wasn't great, but he's a guy who's a really good athlete at the position too. I think Cam Akers might be the biggest steal out of these running backs because he probably will go the lowest out of all the guys we're talking about. But, I mean, he's going to come into the NFL, play in a much better situation than Florida State, and he could dominate because he has all the physical tools to succeed. One guy, though, that I don't love coming out of the ACC that I know PJ does is A.J. Dillon from Boston College. PJ, I'll let you take the side and defend A.J. Dillon a little bit.
Love is a strong word. I have him under Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers is much better than A.J. Dillon. But the argument we got into on Twitter the other day when we were talking about your love for Laviska Shenault, which I still don't understand, is A.J. Dillon got brought into the conversation. I had to step in. No A.J. Dillon slander allowed on my timeline. But A.J. Dillon, he's just a good football player. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we underrating a guy? Yeah, he carried the ball 320 times this year. Not great, but this is a guy who had 1,600 yards as a true freshman playing in a Power 5 conference. That's not something you see every day. The guy is an absolute tank, listed at 6 foot, 250. I think he's going to come in and score touchdowns in the NFL.
If I can briefly get in the way of Max and PJ here, Max was telling me that he saw a Brandon Jacobs comp for A.J. Dillon. And I don't mean to steal what Max is going to say here, but like, really? Brandon Jacobs? Are we
Brandon Jacobs? I don't like that.
We're drafting Brandon Jacobs? And this is what Max and I were talking about earlier. Yeah, he had a boatload of yards in 2 years. But he also, if we're talking about durability of Jonathan Taylor, also had, alert, 618 attempts in 2 years. That's a lot of mileage for Brandon Jacobs.
The difference between Jonathan Taylor is he's going to go in the 1st round, and I'm going to take A.J. Dillon in the 5th.
See, the thing is, I like A.J. Dillon as an undrafted free agent or something like that. Then I'll bring him into my program. However, though, PJ, I mean, you just talked about it. You got to add to the pass game. The guy did not add to the pass game at all.
You have to add to the pass game if you want to be drafted where you're drafting running backs. I'm not on the A.J. Dillon soapbox as, like, get him in the 1st round. I'm on, like, draft him at all. He's good at football.
Okay, like, I can see, like, late pick, like 6th or 7th round. But if you're not adding at all to the pass game, I don't know if I want you on my team that much, man. I mean, look, he's an athlete. He's a freak athlete. He's had a pretty good career at Boston College, but he's just like he's coming into the NFL in the wrong era. Before, I would love A.J. Dillon on my football team. When you have a ground and pound team, get him on my team. But now, when you want receiving ability out of the backfield, I don't think A.J. Dillon really fits that mold.
A.J. Dillon, go to Seattle. You'll be fine. Shotty will call 72 carries for you again.
It's like he's Peyton Hillis and Mike Tolbert. Like, I don't know. I'm not that interested, PJ.
Those guys scored touchdowns.
Because they're vultures. They're vultures.
All right.
Knows they're vultures.
PJ, so A.J. Dillon is one of your guys. However, there's another guy at running back that you really like that not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, another guy we saw kind of beat Syracuse up this year, which, again, not hard to do. I'm big on Anthony McFarland. This is a guy who I want the Jets to target almost desperately. I mentioned Cam Akers, but I'd rather have Anthony McFarland. Only ran a 4.4 at the combine, which is actually a little higher than I thought he was going to run. But this is a guy, if you watch his film, he's got track speed on the field. He plays the game at a faster speed than a lot of guys. Tate is about to rebut me here with he had a couple bad games, had an ankle injury this year that kind of plagued him the whole year. Down year, especially compared to his 2018. But I think this is where you get him at a discount. He's going to go after a guy like J.K. Dobbins, which I don't get that one if we're talking just Big Ten running backs.
Yeah, he's going to go after J.K. Dobbins because J.K. Dobbins is a better running back, PJ. That's how that's going to work out. Anthony McFarland was dealing with the high ankle sprain, like PJ said, which is why you saw it dipped to only 600 rushing yards this year, had 1,000 last year, just a hair over. But also, he's horrible in the pass game, okay? You could maybe say it's Maryland. Yes, I think he almost killed Ohio State last year, if I'm correct, and terrified me in that overtime game, which they should have won.
300 yards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
not
the guy.
Bad.
No, it's not bad at all. But he does add nothing to the pass game. And if we're docking A.J. Dillon for the pass game, we need to be docking Anthony McFarland for the pass game.
But Anthony McFarland is better than A.J. Dillon.
Look, and also he's undersized too, PJ. I mean, he's the guy that he's probably 200 pounds. He came out at 208 in the combine, but he played at 190 at Maryland. And he's not really that shifty either. I just don't know if he's going to fit the NFL. He is fast though. I'll tell you what, he's one of the hardest runners in the country. I like him enough to draft him, but I don't know if I like him enough to draft him higher than 6th round maybe. But he is a guy that could maybe as an undersized running back come in and still succeed. Tate, who is your guy in this draft?
I'm going to go with kind of a sleeper. I'm going to go with Darrington Evans, okay? Appalachia State, okay? I know Max earlier said Cam Akers has all the physical traits, okay? Guess what? Darrington Evans, same size, same weight, more yards this year by over 250 if I'm doing math in my head, right? But we all know that's wrong. That's a C- in probability and statistics right here you're looking at. 5.8 yards per attempt, 18 rushing touchdowns. I'm kind of all in on this kid. If we're talking about maybe a late round sleeper, you pick him up somewhere, 7th round, 6th round, 5th round. Who knows where the running backs in this draft are actually going to end up. And he could be, your own version of Aaron Jones or Marlon Mack or Chris Carson.
Yeah, look, I like Darrington Evans enough. He's also a little undersized like PJ's guy, which kind of scares me. But
he's the same size as Cam Akers. What are you talking about?
He's 203.
It's right? The same as Cam Akers.
Well, man, I think Cam Akers is a little bit better built than this kid. I don't know. I like Cam Akers more because he can break tackles that much. I like Darrington Evans too. I'm not taking away from him. I do like him. My guy, who is kind of a cop-out answer, it seems like, because he seems to be one of the best running backs in this class. However, not a lot of people have him in their top 5. He might be my number 2 guy. Zach Moss, coming out of Utah. His speed isn't great, sure. But my goodness gracious, this dude breaks tackles. And he adds to the pass game, too. He is one of the most elusive running backs in the nation. And Tate, I know, big numbers guy, you probably love his numbers.
Yeah, so we each took a guy. I don't know if you figured that out, anyone watching this podcast. And Max had an early pick on Zach Moss. And I'm going to tell you, I was going to pick Zach Moss before Max did. 1,400 rushing yards this year on 235 carries, 6 yards per attempt, 15 rushing touchdowns, and he's also nearly 400 receiving yards, which is second, I think, in the player pool for running backs. So he's very good in the receiving game, and he's very good on the ground. I'm a huge Zach Moss fan. He is, I guess, 5'9", 223. I don't know what we're talking about size now. It's the same as Cam Akers, Darrington Evans, but it's fine. I'm going to put it aside, and we're going to deal with that and move on.
I think Zach Moss might be too good to be in the just other guys section, as Max even kind of mentioned. But fine, I'll give it to you. He's really good. He's under Cam Akers for me. He's over A.J. Dillon. Again, I want to reiterate, A.J. Dillon is not worth picking high. I just think he's good at football, and he's good enough to be on an NFL team.
Well, listen, like I said, the Zach Moss sounds like a cop-out, but I was looking, and we almost had him as a topic in this, but I was looking through guys' rankings of the running backs, and Zach Moss consistently was outside of the top 5, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So I had him in as my guy, but yeah, like, I love Zach Moss translating to the next level. That basically wraps up the offensive side of the ball. PJ, what are your biggest takeaways about the offense in this draft?
I mean, wide receiver. That's the big takeaway. If you are a team, like I hate to keep beating the dead horse, but it's, you talk about what you know. The New York Jets better come out of this draft with 2 wide receivers. I don't care when you take them. That's a lie. I do kind of care when you take them, but if you leave with 2, I'll be fine. This is it. This wide receiver class is going to shape the careers of guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, this next generation of quarterbacks, Darnold, that whole 2018 class. This draft is going to shape the rest of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, PJ is exactly right. I think if you're a team in the top 10 in the first round, you get a tackle. I think we're going to see a lot of that. And then there's those same teams might be taking a wide receiver to help their young quarterback who they just were trying to protect, but then also add him weapons later in the second round with one of these million wide receivers that are available. Quarterbacks, I mean, we talked about them. There's Joe Burrow, there's Tua, then there's Herbert, and then there's everybody else. Including Jake Fraud, who's like probably at the bottom of the list, right next to Shea Patterson. Him and Shea are holding hands, skipping off into the sunset. And then tight ends, I mean, there's also nothing much there. Adam Trautman, PJ, go find the Dayton highlights again because we're scrubbing it up. Okay, keep your eyes on him because he could be something to watch.
Yeah, like PJ just said, this receiver class, this is it, man. Like, this is as good as it's going to get for a very long time, in my opinion. Top to bottom, it's got depth, but also it's got the top guys. So I know a lot of people are probably saying, oh, it's a deep enough class. Let's not take Judy or Lamb or Ruggs high. No. Still take those guys high because they
and then take another one.
And then take another one. Exactly. PJ, as a Jets fan, you probably want 2 receivers after the third round is over.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go tackle one of these guys, and it's going to be one. Wirfs is the only guy I'd be okay with over any of these 3 receivers. But if you go tackle, you better probably trade up from 48 to go get Michael Pittman and take Van Jefferson at 68. Because let's get this rolling.
Yeah, but definitely not Laviska. Not Laviska. Avoid Laviska, Max. Number 4, you have him at 4.
Wait. I can't wait. Listen, we're probably gonna do a live draft show, and when Laviska Shenault gets picked, man, I'm probably gonna buy a jersey of wherever he goes. The big takeaway from all of us, I think, though, is take a wide receiver early, and please, good God, do not draft a running back until day 3.
Or Jordan Love. Or
Jordan Love. Do not value these guys higher than they should be. If you need a position in this draft, maybe draft for value more than position and more than need. Fill your needs in free agency and draft the best players in this draft. But like I said, that wraps up the offensive side of the football. There still is a whole other side of football to get to. The defensive side, which we'll get into our next episode. We've got a lot of takes coming out on that, but this wraps up the running backs and offensive linemen in this draft. For PJ Clark and Tate Sigworth, I'm Max Chadwick. Stay irrelevant.